Hi, I'm Annie, and this year I've been studying interior design, and I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about what interior designers do. Basically what interior designers do is not only do they make a space more beautiful, but they make it a lot more functional and safe and organized for people that live there. A huge part of interior design is comfort, and it's really important for people in their homes to be comfortable and be happy in their homes. And a lot of people don't realize how much what your space looks like and the colors in the room can affect how they feel about their life and things going on around them. So, but basically the most important part that interior designers like to focus on the most is making a space more functional, because a lot of times houses have a lot of clutter or they're small and the space hasn't been maximized the way that it needs to be. So this year I've been doing some research, and these are some of the assessments I've done. And I first looked into the importance of kitchens in homes, because a lot of interior designers, they specialize in certain rooms in their houses, and kitchens are a really big one because they're the heart of the home. And I read that most people spend about 2 hours in their kitchen out of their entire day if you cut out the time that you're sleeping, and that's the most time you spend in any room of your house. And also I read that kitchen cabinets are opened 80 times a day, any kitchen cabinet. And as much as that doesn't seem very remarkable, it goes to show how important kitchens are, and it shows how durable things in the kitchen need to be and how important the materials you use are. And also, as I referenced before, color and light are really important, because colors can reflect on people's moods whether they know it or not, and it can cause people to be really miserable inside their homes and not even know why. And then also, light plays a huge role in homes, because too much lighting can be overwhelming for someone's brain and can also lead to them being unhappy. One of the biggest things I learned about, and this is also from one of my interviews, that safety and materials are super important. I found this extremely interesting because I read about how there's some materials that you can use in your house that can actually cause you to have illnesses later in life. And one of the biggest things that people usually don't know about is some carpets are made out of a certain material that can lead to asthma and other diseases in babies if they crawl on it for a certain amount of time. And this has happened to a lot of people, and interior designers are typically some of the only people that know about this. So there's plenty of people that have materials in their homes that are being hurt every day living in their own house, and they're not even aware of it. And this is part of why interior designers are important, aside from the fact that they make your home more beautiful. It's also about safety. I also did another research assessment on design technology, because a lot of designers prefer to draw their designs and others prefer to use computers to do it on a program called AutoCAD. And I looked into different apps to use for designing homes that one of the people I've interviewed brought up. And so they talked about how some of the apps we have on today's smartphones and iPads and stuff like that make it really, really easy to design. So I downloaded one and I spent some time playing with it, and I realized that although the program makes it really easy and clean, it takes time because of some of the organization in the apps, and it's hard to manipulate some of the moving walls and putting furniture in, and especially dimensions of things. And so it's sometimes as the scaling on those make it really easy, but in some ways I feel like it'd be easier to draw it out. Even though the way technology is going today, most designers turn to the technology more. So I can imagine that the professional programs like AutoCAD are really important for this, but that was just what I gained from my own experience with those apps. And then the last thing I learned about was sustainable design, and it's become really popular today. And basically what it is making sure that you're designing your home and it's going to be good for the environment in the future. And in the past, the environmental problems that can come with certain things you put in your home have not been focused on. but this is becoming huge for interior designers, and I noticed that if I'm going to go forward with this, I'm going to have to become really knowledgeable in sustainable design. The next thing I want to talk about is my interviews, and my very first one was with Kathy Rollins, and these are all interior designers, so those are all of their titles. Most of them are all residential interior designers, which means they work for clients in homes like we live. They don't work in corporate offices and design for them. But Kathy Rollins, she talked to me a lot about clients, and we spoke for a really long time about what you need to do to deal with clients, because when it comes to a person's home, people tend to get very protective and emotional, and sometimes that leads them to be either really pushy or really, or just they blame a lot of problems that might be happening with their home on the interior designer. And so we talked a lot about how it's important to have a lot of composure when dealing with clients, and how you just really need to be sensitive to all of their needs. And another thing we spoke about with clients was, she used the term middle spoke of the wheel, and she means that the interior designer has to be able to deal with the vendors, the general contractors, and the clients, and be able to connect all of them, and she's the point that they're all connected by. And I thought this was really important because there's a lot of times, aside from even interior design, where someone needs to be that communicator. And so I think this, the communication aspect can translate into many other careers if this does not become something I want to do forever. And then another thing she talked about was the importance of materials, just like I talked about with safety. The interior designers are some of the only people that know the cost of materials, how long they last, the safety of them, how they feel, what they're going to be good for, how they're going to look in certain spaces. And the clients don't know much about this, and they need the education and the guidance from the interior designer. And that got me kind of researching materials after that, because I want to have a better understanding of how materials work in a space. And then also a really good thing about her was that she was previously a mentor to a girl at Centennial, and she is also actually my mentor now. Oops. Oop. What happened? I'm hitting the right button. There we go. Okay. So the second interview I did was with Nicole Arnold, and the biggest thing about this interview was that she had a resource room where she worked, and she worked with a couple other interior designers. They weren't partnered, but they shared an office space. That way they could share resources as well. And these resource rooms are these giant, like, I'd say they're about the size of like a living room in like a relatively large house. And they just have like wall to wall tons of materials and accessories like door handles and cabinet handles and just swatches, like, and colors, and everything. It's huge, and I hadn't been exposed to that before. So aside from even interviewing her, I had a really good idea of all the kinds of resources that interior designers need to be successful. And then from there, we talked a lot about unpredictability of business. And she started when the economy was not very good, so she had to be really diligent, and she had to persevere through some rough things to get her business started. And we talked a lot about how when the economy is not going very well, it's hard for interior designers to get jobs, because the last thing people want to focus on during those rough times is how their house looks. They're more worried about going out and getting jobs, and they don't even have the money for these for this kind of a business. So she just emphasized to me how you need to be aware of how America is doing and how the economy is doing, and where you are trying to set up a business, because that's really important based on the people that live there. And then the last thing we talked about was residential versus commercial design, because she does both. And the things that she really likes about residential is that you can have a really one-on-one connection with a client, and there's a lot more creativity involved. But one of the good things about commercial is that emotions aren't involved, so you just are straightforward and you get the job done. But you are lacking creativity, and you can't have as good as a time with it, because it's just like in an office space. It can't be all out all the time. Like residential can be really cool, and you can be really creative with it. Why does that keep happening? Okay, so the next interview I did was with Kevin Twitty. And this one was actually really cool because it was right over, it's just down the road on the tollway, and he works basically in what looks like a showroom. And so I walked in, and I felt like I was in like one of those furniture stores where you can just, there was furniture like wall to wall, and it was huge. Like, it was probably, the place was probably bigger than a movie theater. And I didn't really know what to expect from the interview, but we sat down in actually one of the setups in the big showroom, and we talked, and he told me that they use it as a space to bring clients in and give them examples of what they can put in their homes, and then they can pick from there and then kind of alter some of the things in the showroom. And he put a lot of emphasis on paperwork, which I was surprised by that. But interior designers actually do a lot of paperwork because they're constantly turning in custom designs that are going to be put in people's homes. And so he told me that 80% of his job is just doing paperwork, and the other 20% is actually being with the clients and actually doing designing. So that kind of opened my eyes a little bit to all of the sitting down and not really getting into the design aspect that I would have to do if I became an interior designer. And then he also talked to me about the steps to becoming an interior designer, and he focused on, during college, getting an internship, graduating, and working at a firm. And then not until you work at a firm for a good amount of time can you go off and be by yourself, because you need the necessary skills. You need to learn from your experience before you can be on your own. And then one of the big things that I really liked that he said was design for the client, not yourself. And I think that this applies to a lot of places in my life, because oftentimes people ask you for something and you kind of want to do it the way you like, but they're probably not going to like the way that you want to get things done. And I realized that if you want to be good at anything, you have to do the things the way that the person you're working for wants you to do them. You can't just go off on your own limb. And so I thought that this was really important. I think it can apply to different places in any career. And then my fourth interview was with Stephanie Nix, and she was really cool because she was really young and she's just gotten started. So I got a good idea of how interior designers getting started at this time period are. And she got to talk to me a lot about the perks of business ownership. And she likes having your own business because you have a lot of creativity. And when you work with a firm, it's a lot of collaboration. You don't get to do everything the way that you think it should be. But and then she also said it gives her a lot of incentive to work, because she knows if she's not working, she's not going to get paid, because she is her business. And so that I kind of like that, because that pushes you to work really hard, because then you need the incentive, you need the money. But she said that the only thing she doesn't like about business ownership is sometimes you need someone there to help you out through it, because there's a lot to do. And so that's why she has an assistant that actually worked for the Home and Garden Network, and I thought that was really interesting. She talked to me a lot about showrooms and showcases, and because she's younger, she's more involved in some of the new and upcoming trends. So she goes to a lot of showrooms where she gets to see new appliances and new things coming onto the market, which keep her kind of in the game. And so I really liked that she brought that up, because I'd never heard that before in any of my previous interviews. And then she also gave me some tools for understanding what the client needs. And she talked to me about questions to ask them and to probe them about, maybe, have you seen anything in a magazine, or have you worked with a designer before? What did you like when you went to this house? What did you like when you saw this house? And so she gave me a lot of ideas about how to pull information out of people, which I thought was really helpful. My last interview was with Miss Carolyn Hernser, and she actually runs a very unique business. She is in an interior design partnership with another woman, and I had never heard of that before, and because usually interior designers just are the sole owner of their business. But I thought the partnership was really fascinating, because her and her partner get along really well, and they balance each other's needs really, really effectively. And so their designs are often really, really successful and cohesive, because they check each other. And if one person does something and the other's like, hey, maybe that's not such a great idea, and they're like, oh, okay, and then they can move on from there. And so I thought that was a really new idea, and then I might want to look into something like that. And then she talked about a program that her business does called the Out of the Box program. And she basically what it is they have on their website an option for people that don't live in the service area to order designs by just turning in dimensions of a room in their house, and they can get designs sent to them from her location, and then they can hire a contractor to finish it wherever they live. And I had never heard of that before, because usually designers like to be really involved in their own designs, but here they're still making a lot of profit, but they're making a design, being paid for it, and sending it off for someone else to do, which I think is really efficient because they're doing two things at once. And I thought that was a really cool program. And then another thing we talked about was networking, and she just talked to me a lot about how vendors, they're actually really easy to network with because vendors need the job. They need to work with designers to have their furniture and their accessories in a person's house. And so she told me that probably the hardest part is actually finding clients, and that comes into marketing themselves. And so that's something I plan on researching more about. And then she also talked about the client's needs and designer standards, and then contracts. And she told me a story about, she had a client once that got very upset with her and told her that she was not doing a very good job because she was a woman. And she was actually the second person I talked to that had been discriminated against because she was a woman. And that came up as a problem for the client, and they ended up getting very upset with her. But she told me that the best thing to do is stick to your own standards and make sure that the clients sign a contract and know that whatever you give them is what they were asking for. And if they try to come up with some random thing last minute, they can't always provide that for their client. And so she just told me that it's really important to just stick to what you know and don't let clients that are absurd try to get into your head. And so I learned a lot from that. So the key points from all my interviews was that interior designers wear every hat. They are very skilled and diverse, and you have to be good at many different skills between communication, design, knowing how to run your own business, especially financially. And then about how communication is really everything. If you don't communicate with your client, it's really hard to be successful, and it's really hard for the client to like how their house turns out when you're finished. Most of my people I interviewed told me that it's important to have an internship, work at a firm, and then go solo and have your own business. And then I learned a lot about needing to stay in touch with the changing of the environment and how technology is changing and people want the newest things. And so you need to be aware of how everything's changing. And so this year for my original work, from all this, I realized that I really don't know much about actual styles, and so I decided that I'm going to do an original work to study the evolution of interior design. And I'm starting back in the 20s, and I'm studying every decade and putting together almost like a collage for every decade, and including all the different types of colors, furniture, and styles that were included in each decade. And then I'm going to have a response where I analyze all of the patterns and then predict what the future of interior design might look like. And my mentor, I talked to her about it, and she actually told me that there's a huge correlation between colors in people's homes and actual historical events, which I found really fascinating, so I'm going to look more into that. And I'm going to wrap this up by talking about my quote. My quote is, "In wisdom gathered over time, I have found that every experience is a form of exploration." And this is why I'm in ISM. I just want to explore and see what is the right thing for me to do. And so I've just really wanted to make that a goal of mine. So despite whether or not interior design is going to be something I'm going to do, I really want to make sure that I explore and have really good experiences and learn a lot that I can apply to every place in my life. So, thank you.